Hi, my name is Lisa Richter. I'm Director of Industry Outreach and Growth for CSIA. Welcome to the Masterclass. Before we get started, a quick word about CSIA. Maybe if you're here, you are very familiar with the association. But if you are not, all you really need to know is that CSIA's mission is to help system integrators build better businesses. How do we do that? Well, for starters, we have a team of volunteer SIs who have crowdsourced a best practices manual to help system integrators scale their businesses. In fact, the BP committee just released a beta version of the latest manual, which makes that 6.1. CSIA also offers a certification program and other resources, including professional development, learning from peers, and access to vetted professional services companies, including insurance and legal, who understand a system integrator's unique business needs. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow your SI programs, understand your customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share your thought leadership. With thousands of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange helps system integrators, industry suppliers, and manufacturers connect and do business. For system integrators and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position yourself as a thought leader, and nurture prospects during their complicated buyer's journey. If you are not currently a member, now is a great time to join. Membership provides you and your entire team a full lineup of virtual events and other resources from accounting to sales to operations, 365 days per year. It also means you and your team can attend the CSIA conference because this annual in-person event is members only. If you are currently a member, thank you. If you just want to get a flavor of CSIA and its members, I encourage you to listen to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. CSIA members talk all things industrial automation, and it's just a great way to hear what your peers are up to. One last housekeeping note before I turn it over to today's speaker. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. That helps us stay organized. You're more than welcome to use the chat feature to share information or chit-chat amongst yourselves, but the Q&A is really where we will look for your questions, and it helps the speaker not have to look in a bunch of different places, and it's just helpful for us. So we appreciate that. The session is being recorded, and you will get a link to the recording in the next day or so. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to today's speaker. Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. Let me share slides. All right, so thanks everyone for joining. My name is Ben Whiteman. I am product manager at GE Vernova in our digital manufacturing business. I'm responsible for our sustainability, and my responsibilities are for really helping to kind of create the bridge between the capabilities that we offer our customers and the challenges they face with respect to sustainability and circular economy in the industrial and manufacturing sectors. So today I'll be talking about some of the context, some of the urgency with respect to sustainability in these sectors, the role that software can play. I'll give a kind of a sneak peek into some of the things that we're doing within digital manufacturing to help address some of these challenges for our manufacturing and industrial customers. And then we'll talk about system integrators and the kind of unique position that community is in, the role that you can play, the opportunity that is available to systems integrators to help really move the needle. And we'll end with some Q&A. So let's get in. Why are manufacturing companies so concerned about sustainability today? Well, first and foremost, there's a huge cost driver that's associated with sustainability. And that may not be immediately intuitive to everyone, but in many countries, the cost of energy is through the roof. And we're seeing increasing volatility in energy prices. If we think about the connection to sustainability, the energy that's consumed has a direct relationship with the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced by those operations. And in addition, as the grid electrifies, as this global energy transition unfolds, the volatility in the energy markets are only going to intensify. Energy costs are only going to continue to rise, right? Our mission within GE Vernova is to deliver the global transition toward renewable, affordable, low carbon energy. And this is already underway. We know this is a need, but there are going to be some significant impacts to that new future. And this is placing increasingly significant cost pressures on our customers. But energy is not the only issue. Many of our customers find themselves operating in areas that are increasingly under water stress, and the costs of mitigating those risks are only expected to increase as well. So many customers are finding that as climates are changing, as weather patterns are changing, as water management practices are changing, these are adding to the risks that they face for many of their sites. And in response to those risks, we're seeing policies emerge. We're seeing legislation emerge and solidify around the world to try to promote more effective management of resources, to try to promote circular supply systems, to reduce supply security risks. We'll talk about these in detail a bit later, but these are only continuing to grow in importance and prevalence in the years to come. And in response to those things, we're seeing a lot of action and a lot of investment in the industrial sector. Some of the companies we work with, Lego, for example, if you think about Lego's entire product, it is entirely based on fossil fuels, right? They have a plastic brick that they sell. Lego is announced, I think, end of last year, they're planning to spend almost $500 million over the next few years, and that's on an annual basis by 2025. Volkswagen is kind of rethinking its entire business toward EV production. They've already stopped selling internal combustion engine vehicles in select markets, and they're planning to spend $66 billion in executing that EV transition over the next 5 years. And this is not just select kind of forward-leading companies. The Environmental Sustainability Index measures executives and kind of gauges their priorities and how they plan to spend their organization's budgets. In 2024, 83% indicated that they were going to increase spending on sustainability and ESG, and it was the highest ranked priority. The second highest priority, interestingly, in this index was digital transformation, and we'll talk about the link between digital transformation and sustainability extensively today. So just a bit of education here. So manufacturing and industrial sectors contribute significantly. They have a lot of risk exposure when it comes to climate risk. This visual on the right here, this is data from the International Energy Agency for 2022, which is the most recent data set that they've published. You can see that the industrial manufacturing sectors, they account for an immense amount of carbon emissions. And this is just direct emissions. This doesn't include the indirect emissions that come from consuming energy to run their machines and so on. Roughly a quarter of the global energy system emissions are attributed to manufacturing and industrial operations. Of that, 37% of the global energy consumption total is attributed to manufacturing and industrial operations, and the vast majority of that is based from fossil fuels. The indicator to the far right of this diagram indicates the that dark orange line. That's the target for a net zero transition at the 2030 mark. And so you can see there's a lot of work to be done in order to change course and decarbonize these industries to stay in line with the projections that are needed to mitigate the greatest impacts of climate change. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. So when we talk about carbon emissions, there are global standards for how these are accounted, and there are protocols that specify the methodologies that are used to calculate and then report carbon emissions. This is important because we'll talk about regulations here in just a moment, and it's important to understand. We talk about carbon emissions. There are 3 scopes of carbon emissions. Scope 1 represents your direct emissions, the emissions that are directly produced from running a boiler and burning fossil fuels for heating and powering machinery or HVAC systems, the emissions from the petrol or gasoline that's consumed to run a fleet of vehicles. All of those direct emissions are Scope 1. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions, but these still pertain to how you are running your operation. So this is the electricity that you would purchase or the steam that you would use in running your machinery, heating and cooling your factories, or your operations. So these still pertain to the direct activities that you're doing, but they're indirect emissions because someone has to burn fossil fuels in order to generate that electricity or to create that steam, and so that's still attributed to your footprint. And these, you see them kind of outlined in this green box. We call these operational emissions for, I think, obvious reasons, right? These pertain to how the emissions that you need to produce in order to create your products. And then there's a very large category called Scope 3, which sits kind of bookends your operations, right? It's both upstream and downstream. And there are a ton of different categories of this. But these are effectively the indirect emissions that come from your supply chain. So this is on the upstream side, the embedded carbon that's in the raw materials that you purchase, any commuting or employee travel, but also the downstream transportation and distribution of your products, importantly, the use of those products, any waste or end-of-life treatment for the products that you produce. All of this falls into Scope 3. Within the manufacturing sector, there's variability in terms of how companies are exposed to these 3 different types of emissions. Within GE Vernova and our digital manufacturing business, we offer software that helps manufacturers optimize their factories. So I think you can understand we are very focused on those operational emissions. Scope 3 is a bit outside of our focus right now. But that's important to understand because when we think about the regulatory landscape that exists today, manufacturers are increasingly realizing that they're subject to these different legislative agendas, which require full scope carbon reporting and disclosure. So a couple key pieces here. Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is a bit of legislation that was released at the end of 2022 in the EU. This effectively puts forth a standard set or a standard template of information that's required for any company listed on an EU market to disclose publicly. It sets forth a standard set of metrics, methodologies, processes, information that all companies need to report. And it is already in effect. There's kind of a phased implementation of this legislation, but the first companies will need to submit a CSRD compliant report January 1st of 2025, and that's based on data for this year. So the data collection process is already underway for that first wave of customers. The interesting thing about the CSRD is it breaks this old narrative that I think was kind of commonly talked about, that really from a legislative point of view, the EU is the only place that this matters. And that's no longer true because in part because CSRD has eligibility requirements that capture companies that aren't headquartered in the EU. And so it's creating this global ripple in which if you want to do business in the EU, or if you have operations in the EU, you're eligible for CSRD compliance as well. And GE Vernova, my company, is one of those. So we are headquartered here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the US. We will be required to submit our own CSRD compliant report January 1st of 2026. And in response to this, we're seeing similar legislation pop up elsewhere. The SEC back in March of this year formalized their own climate-related rule. And there's an organization called the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is working to harmonize all of these different regional reporting regulations into one international standard. So the takeaway from this slide is the regulations are having an enormous impact on how manufacturing and industrial companies are thinking about and responding to their sustainability initiatives. And this is having a global effect, which is already underway, and companies are already having to figure out how to build the necessary internal infrastructure to comply and meet these expectations. So how is this affecting manufacturing teams? So, in my role, I have had the opportunity to speak with a bunch of customers and experts and companies in the manufacturing and industrial space. We've heard some similar themes in those interactions. We hear that their utility bills are skyrocketing, right? Particularly the cost of energy is up in a number of different geographies. And they often lack the visibility that they need for continuous improvement. Often we hear at the site, we just have our monthly invoice. We have a bill that we get every month, and that's really the only data point that we have on how much we're consuming. Or maybe we have the site level performance, and we can get that in a timely manner, but we don't have any visibility beneath that. And that's important for driving cost out, as you can imagine. It's kind of odd to think about, but imagine trying to improve the OEE or the GLY. These are kind of throughput and productivity metrics. If all you knew was how much time you had, how much went in at the beginning of the month, how much product you produced at the end of the month, and you got your monthly value for your overall equipment effectiveness. And now you're trying to figure out how to improve it, right? That's not enough granularity to really drive action and continuous improvement. That's the case that many of our customers are operating with respect to the cost of water, the cost of electricity, and some of these utilities that they're consuming in their production processes. In addition, that's the data which is needed in order to compute some of these new sustainability metrics that they're being expected to disclose for those ESG regulations. And so, we hear at this point, just about almost all of our customers have some sort of climate goal, whether that's carbon neutrality, whether that's net zero. Just to be clear, when I say carbon neutrality, what that means is those operational emissions, scope 1 and scope 2, are neutralized. Net zero includes scope 3. So net zero means the full scope of carbon emissions that are attributed to that business are balanced to zero. But we hear frequently our customers have a carbon neutrality goal. They have no way of managing that on a daily basis. They have a sustainability team, but often those sustainability teams are siloed from the operational teams or the continuous improvement teams. And so the people who need the data, whether that's to drive performance improvements or cost out, or to report and communicate sustainability performance, They often don't have visibility to the data that they need to make decisions. And this is really where software has an opportunity to move the needle and to drive progress. So we've got a bunch of examples over the decades of different pieces of GE Vernova's software portfolio, improving on dimensions of a customer's sustainability agenda. Often these have been done, in kind of customized ways to date, but we've been able to drive improvements on energy efficiency, on the costs of water and utilities and things. But what we're realizing now is that the landscape is changing, and it's no longer sufficient to try to optimize for energy, water, now carbon emissions, as a separate and isolated initiative. In order to truly achieve operational optimization, manufacturing companies, industrial companies have to manage their KPIs holistically, because the energy that they produce is directly related to the activities that are, or excuse me, the energies that they consume is directly related to how they're running their factories and the activities and events that are taking place on the plant floor. All of these sustainability metrics, they have ties to the operational metrics that manufacturers have been managing for quite some time. And so because these relationships exist, it's not really possible to optimize one or the other, or to try to do both independently, right? Manufacturing companies are realizing they need to manage those things holistically. And so they need to achieve what we're calling sustainability excellence in manufacturing, which is, that operational excellence must be extended to include sustainability considerations as well. And so in order to realize that goal, in order to achieve operational sustainability excellence, and capitalize on synergies that exist, right? If you optimize your scope 2, right? This is the purchased electricity and things. If you optimize your scope 2 emissions at a factory, that has an inherent reduction in the electricity that you are consuming, and which in turn has a cost driver. So there are synergies that exist between profitability and sustainability, but to capitalize on those, a new set of challenges needs to be solved, right? And this extends beyond kind of the traditional use cases that we have helped our customers with in the past. We need to help them to operationalize these sustainability goals. Again, everybody is talking about, they have this goal to be carbon neutral by 2030 or net zero by 2050 and so on. How to get there is a different question. And so helping them to put those goals into action and provide the quality and the granular data that's needed, the traceability down to the plant floor for these metrics, that's crucial in order to operationalize those goals. And if we can align those metrics, the ones which the sustainability teams need to report on and the operational teams need to are using in their performance management routines, then we can start to break some of those organizational silos that exist, and we can start to align those teams so that everyone is operating and everyone is measuring their performance with the same metrics. And in doing so, we can start to make these sustainability KPIs manageable with the same rigor and routine that manufacturers are managing their quality or their OEE. And we can begin to help them to really optimize holistically. But in order to optimize holistically, our realization is process context is crucial. You need to be able to attribute the electricity, the natural gas, the water, the carbon emissions. You need to be able to attribute those resources directly to the products, the assets, and the activities that are happening on the plant floor, right? You have to be able to understand how you're consuming those things in context if you're going to determine the most impactful levers within the constraints that still exist for those operational teams, right? They're still going to be expected to maintain quality. They're still going to be expected to optimize throughput and efficiency. And so we have to be able to provide that context and extend kind of operational performance management to include sustainability dimensions in order to actively manage sustainability KPIs within the larger set of priorities. And within GE Vernova, this is a journey for us as well, right? As I mentioned before, we have examples in which Proficy products have been used to drive improvements. We're working toward evolving and providing more tailored and customized capabilities that address specific use cases. But really, the fruit of this journey is getting to a place where we can enable teams to actively manage these things daily, over the course of a shift, over the course of an hour, right? And so providing them with the tools and the knowledge they need to act upon the holistic set of KPIs, inclusive of these new ones, that's really the goal that we're driving toward. And I want to give just kind of some examples of how that might look. So, imagine many people here are familiar with manufacturing execution systems, or familiar with the kind of traditional S95 tech stack, and how SCADAs and historians can drive value for customers. Here's an example. We've talked a lot about over the years. We've talked a lot about how to increase efficiency, how to increase quality and productivity with a manufacturing execution system and with other digitization tools. Ours, by the way, is called Proficy Smart Factory, but there are many others. You'll be familiar with kind of the visualization pieces, the industrial data management. We do that with our Proficy Historian, manufacturing execution through Proficy Plant applications, and then we have advanced analytics that help to kind of layer on top and squeeze out additional efficiencies. And again, these have driven operational excellence improvements in kind of the traditional sense for a long time. But we can also use these to drive sustainability performance as well. And I'll get to this later in the deck, but we've got some new solutions that we are bringing that kind of help us to move down that innovation timeline that I just showed, to layer some analytics on, specifically for driving contextualized improvements and optimizations on the resources that are being consumed. But part of what makes an MES so powerful is its ability to record events and values at the production process, right? And this can be done by a number of ways. It's not exclusive to MES by any means. But I just wanted to give this example to kind of illustrate this idea of sustainability in context to manufacturing. So, here we have maybe some sort of production event. We're maybe mixing some ingredients together. And as you would expect, we can capture the start and end time of that event. We can capture the batch number that's being produced. We can, capture a variable of some kind. Maybe in this case, it's like the RPM speed of this particular piece of equipment with upper and lower specification limits. What we can also do is attribute sustainability variables to these. So we can capture the total energy that was consumed, the total water that was consumed in that production process, and we can record those things as we're producing our products at each step. So maybe next we have another product that we're running on that same line. This is a different SKU, so we're producing a different product. We're capturing the same things, but in this case, maybe we have a downtime event. And just as before, we can capture these variables associated with the event that's taking place on the plant floor. We can capture the reason that there was a downtime event, the actions that were taken, and again, those variables that we've configured. We can capture the energy and the water that's consumed. And when we resolve that downtime event, then you'll see that kind of the total energy and water for that production step was greater for that product. And we can begin to correlate the things that are happening on the plant floor with the environmental performance of our products. And that's immensely powerful, right? As we go and produce our product, now we can begin to compare them, but also understand why there are differences in the product mix that our customers are producing. So I'm just going to click through this because ultimately what I wanted, the point that I want to make is we can do this at every step in the process, right? And we can begin to help them kind of unpack how they're performing in relation to to the rest of their process, and where there are opportunities to improve. Just to kind of visualize this all in one maybe more simple slide, you're familiar with collecting time series data. We can collect time series data and we can kind of overlay some specifications, an upper and lower control limit. We can help to through SCADA systems, we can help to alarm when we exceed that upper control limit, and kind of denote that there's an action that needs to be taken to get back on track. But when we talk about overlaying resource consumption data with operational context, this is what's possible, right? We're able now to say, how much electricity in this example am I consuming when I'm producing? But how much am I also consuming when I'm down? Maybe there's an idle time event, or maybe there's a downtime event. I'm still consuming some of those resources, even when I'm not producing products. So we can begin to kind of pinpoint where the waste is and where the opportunities are. And we're really treating these resources no longer as overhead, but actually as a dimension of the process which we can control, and as an ingredient that's required to produce the products. In this case, maybe there's a product changeover, right? There's a changeover event, and Lean would tell us that that's a form of waste. And so how can we gain visibility to what we're consuming at each of these different events, whether it be a changeover, maybe there's a shift change and there's some idle time that exists as the teams are leaving and the new team is entering. Maybe there's a non-conformance, right? Manufacturing teams are very familiar with the KPI, cost to poor quality. Well, when we produce something we can't sell, that required energy and water and emitted carbon emissions to produce, if that is a defective product that we can't gain value from, then we can kind of think about that as the environmental cost of poor quality. So hopefully this illustrates the real power that comes with operations context, and really integrating some of this resource usage data in the context of everything that's happening on the plant floor. Just kind of in addition to that, we can layer in analytics. We can help them to understand the benchmarks that exist, begin to explain why some of those deviations might be occurring, but really trying to help them gain greater insight into where they can take action and where they can optimize. And this can be as sophisticated as closed loop control, or this can be as simple as recommend changing this set point to maintain your quality metrics, but also lower your water consumption, or lower your natural gas usage, or so on. So really from the automation layer all the way up to analytics, we can provide a lot of value with manufacturing software. To that end, spend just a moment or two kind of highlighting some innovation that we've been working on here at GE Vernova over the past few months. And I had flashed this kind of up earlier without going into much detail, but I want to return to this slide because Proficy for Sustainability Insights is our kind of very light, very flexible new solution, which enables teams to really get toward contextualized action and insights. It's meant to be very simple, very very lightweight, agnostic to the automation systems or the historians or the data sources that are being used to onboard that data, but to provide the ability to really layer that utilities data with the other contextual data that they might be capturing, and understand not just how much I'm consuming at any given point of time, but is that more or less than I would expect, right? Is that consumption value, because it will change, right? If I'm producing one product and then I change to another product, I may need to run new machinery. That product may be expected to have a greater energy footprint, for example. And so this context is really needed to create meaningful benchmarks. If I'm producing a product at one factory, or maybe multiple factories, there might be variability in how those factories are performing. So creating the ability to apply analytics to create contextualized benchmarks that consider the product and the plant, the location that those products are being produced at is really powerful and really important. And in those instances where there is a deviation, you are consuming more than you would expect. The analytics engine behind Proficy for Sustainability Insights enables you to understand why. It enables you to correlate that consumption value to the 10 most correlated tags, most highly correlated tags with that performance value at that given point in time. So your frontline management teams, your technicians and operators, they get a jump start on diagnosing what the problem might be and where they need to go perform corrective action. But again, ultimately, we're really trying to get toward operationalizing and taking action on managing these resource consumption metrics. And so again, we can deploy those optimization models. We can deploy the models in an automated way, right? We can do that through closed loop control if that's right for the customer. If the customer's not there in their digital maturity journey, this could be just as simple as providing a space to create actions and assign those actions to teams. And I'll walk you through that very quickly here in just a moment. So there's kind of a gamut of optimization opportunities. It could be a recommended set point change. It could be all the way up to closed loop control. But really trying to use this as a first step in creating a path to action for customers. So again, I'm just going to fly through this pretty quickly, but I just wanted to kind of help visualize this solution and what value it provides. So here, if I'm a site manager, I can very quickly assess my site's performance against a set number of KPIs. And by the way, these KPIs were designed with these legislative agendas in mind. Again, trying to break some of those silos that exist between the ops teams that are managing the process and the sustainability teams that are accountable for demonstrating improvement on these KPIs. And so here we can measure, we can filter by what plant. If I'm at a global level, I can look across my enterprise. But I can evaluate by cost, by greenhouse gas emissions. I can filter by the utility types that are associated with energy or with water. And I can begin to analyze my process very quickly. But then if I'm maybe an operations manager or a frontline manager, I can begin to step into the data. I can filter by what plant I'm in. I can start to look to see by production line or section, where am I consuming the most energy? Maybe I have a bad actor asset or a piece of equipment that's consuming more, all the way down to the specific meter that might be driving that performance. I can also analyze by some organizational and product-based context, right? I can look at how different shifts are performing. I can look at maybe there's some behavioral dynamics, right? And one team is consistently consuming less energy as they run the shift than another team. How much energy am I consuming? How much water am I consuming? How many greenhouse gas emissions am I emitting when I'm not actually producing anything? Or importantly, how do changes in my product mix? If I change the product mix I'm running, how are those SKUs performing relative to one another, and how does that impact my performance? And of course, seasonality in the data, variability over the course of a day or an hour. But if I'm a technician, I can get all the way down to my asset, my piece of equipment, and I can analyze how it's performing relative to those expected benchmarks that the analytics behind Sustainability Insights produces for me. So I can see, what is my benchmark average? What is my current rate? You see that represented here in blue. What's the expected maximum for these conditions that I'm operating under today? That's illustrated in red. And in those instances in which I am above that expected maximum, the solution will generate an alert that I can click on. I can see those top 10 correlated tags and begin to troubleshoot and begin to take corrective action. And then finally, if there are actions that can be taken, there's a very simple action manager here that enables them to manage those troubleshooting tasks, assign it to myself, assign it to my colleague, assign it to the shift that's going to replace me, So again, this is very rudimentary, but it's just a simple way to begin to take action, maybe for a customer who isn't ready for closed loop control. So just a quick summary here, what we're really focusing on is providing value quickly, right? Getting a tool into the hands of our customers that enables real-time resource usage monitoring, that enables a contextualized understanding of how they're performing against, some standard set of KPIs supported by, those advisory analytics. This is a big theme for us within GE Vernova. And is represented to people who aren't data scientists, right? It's represented to people who need to take action and benefit from analytics without having to really be experts. So that was a bit of a kind of sneak preview in. So we kind of walked through the context of sustainability in the industrial and manufacturing space. We talked about the opportunity for software to really help drive action and provide context. We talked about some of the things that we are doing within digital manufacturing here at GE Vernova. I want to now kind of end with, how can system integrators get involved? What's the opportunity here? So there are a number of ways in which I think systems integrators are really uniquely positioned to help manufacturing companies get further along that path to action. There's some research recently by Deloitte in which they surveyed a bunch of executives at a bunch of big companies, and the challenge that consistently arose through that research is in fact, the greatest challenge that these executives reported was the availability of data to meet the expectations and these ESG disclosure requirements that are unfolding, and the quality of that data to meet those expectations. So this is a huge opportunity for systems integrators, because digitization is a key accelerator in providing the data, the high quality data that's needed to act, giving access to the right data to meet these expectations, and ultimately to determine how to take action and how to progress, right? And that data might exist today in a multitude of different systems. That might be very complex and complicated, or maybe it's not even being captured at all today, right? And so there may be, in fact, there will likely be many opportunities for new projects that require metering to get the data that's needed, to connect those systems, to connect those assets, to automate to automate that data collection and so on. So there will be an upswell in activity required to get access to high quality data. And that data quality piece is important too, because again, as we've discussed, you have to have granular data. You have to have resolution to where the data that supports the metrics which need to be reported is coming from. And often that data is just too poor quality or lacks the context that's needed to drive decision making, ultimately that will set those companies out either ahead or behind from their peers. So all of these things are business growth opportunities for systems integrators. There will be a lot of projects that will come from needing to get access to new data or needing to consolidate data that might exist in disparate systems today. And what we find is, often that's really hard for manufacturing companies. They really struggle connecting the dots between how they can leverage their existing capabilities or capabilities that are available to them with elements of their sustainability strategy. Certainly they have digital transformation strategies and they have sustainability strategies, but connecting the dots between those two things can be very difficult. Sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right? And so those organizational silos and simply the complexity of these challenges, they may need help in connecting those dots. So that's where systems integrators can really play a proactive role, can really be a key link in bringing together the synergies that exist that can be used to create greater business value for our customers. So don't wait for customers to come to you for help on these initiatives, because they may not be able to see how the pieces connect. Those organizational silos may be maybe challenging for them to recognize that you can play a role and you can really help them on a dimension that they may not have considered. And the other thing is, there's going to be an emphasis on the enterprise, right? Enterprise connectivity is going to be needed if manufacturing and industrial companies are going to be able to comply and simplify the act of compliance with some of those regulatory requirements I mentioned earlier, and also effectively manage progress toward their goals. So all things considered, digital transformation is a key enabler, right? It's a huge opportunity for manufacturing companies to manage these initiatives at scale. So my recommendations would be proactive. When you're talking with customers, inject yourselves into that conversation. Understand their strategies, both from a digitization and a sustainability point of view, right? Ask them, what is your sustainability strategy? Tell me what challenges that you're facing. What data do you need in order to meet those goals that you're setting? And be that partner, right? Partner with the manufacturing and industrial companies, partner with your customers to help them to create the bridge that connects those two things. So, systems integrators, they can really position themselves as that trusted advisor, right? You can really help the customer to understand, how do I collate all of this data that I need for regulations, for investors and stakeholder expectations, for my customers? How do I collate all the data I need to generate the communications that I need to generate the actionable improvements that are going to set me apart from the competition? That opportunity is ripe for systems integrators, right? Really helping them to leverage that data to get from maybe operational excellence as we think about it today toward sustainability excellence. So just to quickly wrap up here, if I can leave you with three things, I would just say, neither sustainability excellence nor operational excellence can be attained independently, right? These things have relationships with one another. They have direct ties, and how you run your factory influences your sustainability performance. And so we have to help industrial companies to optimize these things together. The second piece is the systems integrator community has a key role to play in doing that, right? Helping to create those bridges in the technologies and the capabilities that are available to customers that ultimately enable the holistic strategy for that organization, not just a component of it, but the multidimensional strategy. And this represents a huge business opportunity for systems integrators if they can be proactive, if they can drive these conversations, and really play that role of the trusted advisor in helping to generate business value from the data that they have. That's all I have for you today. Please get in touch. Again, my name is Ben Whiteman. Would be happy to connect with you if you have additional questions, or if you want to kind of engage even deeper on this. We're going to be having another event for SIs, I think in July. So if you want to learn more about that, or the product innovation that I was highlighting earlier, reach out, get in touch. Yeah, looking forward to engaging with everyone in the future. So with that, I'll kind of pause and open up any questions that the audience may have. Any thoughts or reflections. Would love to hear from you.
So hi, it's me again. We do have some questions if you're up for it, Ben, after you refresh yourself. Why do you think it's important to integrate sustainability KPIs into operational processes as opposed to managing these priorities separately?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question. I think, again, I think it speaks to what I was talking to just a moment ago, and also earlier. The fact is that So those sustainability KPIs are influenced by how you run your factory. Um, the decisions that are made both at the plant floor, but also at the organizational level, with respect to how production is scheduled, how the production planning process unfolds, which product mixes are allocated to which factories. All of those things influence how much, how many resources are consumed, how much, energy, water, um, how many materials are consumed. And all of those things have a direct impact on the sustainability performance of the organization. And so if you're just looking at my total carbon emissions for my enterprise or even at my site, you'll miss the mark and you'll miss the opportunities to really balance and optimize those things together. Because obviously the best way to, or maybe not the best way, but the simplest way to optimize, let's just say electricity consumption, for example, is just to shut your factory off, right? But obviously that's not a viable option for manufacturers. And so the context is really needed in order to figure out where they can balance through the actions that they're taking all of the KPIs, all of the metrics, all of the priorities that they're expected to be managing. So that context piece is really critical.
How do you think manufacturing software can help respond to the recent wave of sustainability legislation?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways. I talked through some of that today, but certainly there are many other ways. We're seeing a huge surge in ESG reporting software. So there are a bunch of players out there that have been around. Some are very new, some have been around for a long time, that are helping to, kind of at the enterprise kind of corporate layer, aggregate data, and help kind of aggregate, but also kind of format that in the way that's needed to simplify reporting compliance. So there's a whole, kind of sub industry within the software space that is trying to solve that problem. More, kind of closer to home for me, really again, um, it's helping to manage life after these regulations, right? There's the old, I don't know if it's an adage or if it's a saying, but there's, it's commonly said that the moment you have to disclose something or report on something, the next moment you'll be expected to be improving on it, right? And so if we can leverage software and embed these new performance management metrics into the routines that the operations teams and the other teams within the organization are using, we can help them to manage, manage those effectively and demonstrate improvement. So that, next, in 2020, if you're a company that's going to be submitting your CSRD report in 2025, in 2026, you can show improvement on those metrics, right? And ultimately, that's the whole point of these legislative agendas, right? It's to level the playing field and to create a standard set of information that investors, customers, consumers, stakeholders can use to evaluate one company against the other. And that necessitates a lot of thinking and a lot of planning to how you're going to manage those things to demonstrate improvement, to remain competitive, to mitigate risks. And I think that's really a key opportunity for software and for software like we have within GE Vernova, right? Manufacturers over the years have become world class when it comes to managing quality and throughput and productivity. They're not world class at managing sustainability yet, but they can be, right? And they can use the software tools that have been, kind of refined over the years at helping to drive out waste, at helping to be more efficient, at helping to improve OEE and quality. They can extend those to sustainability use cases, and really, begin to manage those things and demonstrate improvement and set themselves apart from their competitors.
KPIs should be built to help manage and track sustainability at a site.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think this one, there are kind of two answers. the one that maybe the annoying one is it depends. And we'll just get that out of the way to begin with. So there are, certainly depending on what sector you're in, what industry you're in, even within a sector, what product you're making, you might have, a unique process, unique equipment. There may be reasons that lead you to require measuring a KPI that's very specific to you. At the same time, though, there are common metrics, right? Like almost everybody in the manufacturing industrial space consumes electricity, right? So total electricity consumption, kind of embedding that into the asset model, kind of plant model context. So if you want to measure total energy consumption, also measuring energy consumption by production line. If you get down to the asset level, that's great. As I mentioned before, being able to kind of contextualize that and measure that performance by product, by maybe even by team. Those sorts of things enable you to take a lot more meaningful action. Water is another common one. Water and steam, these are utilities that are consumed quite a bit. Measuring, again, kind of the same total water consumption, total steam used, those kinds of things. And really taking that same approach for each utility that's consumed in the manufacturing space. I think starting with the resources that are consumed is a great place to start, because this is a bit closer to what these operational and facilities management teams know. So it's a bit closer, it's a bit more familiar. Extending out from that, obviously, as we've discussed, electricity has a direct impact on scope 2 emissions. So measuring scope 2 emissions at the site level and really across the enterprise, and driving that metric down to the plant floor. Scope 1 emissions. So these are things like if you were burning natural gas to run your boiler or to run a furnace, that those emissions fall under scope 1. That's another important KPI. Scopes 1 and 2 are really important. And again, there's some different sensitivities. Like if you're in the food and beverage space, and you're just mixing ingredients, you might have different exposure to scope 1 and scope 2 than say scope 3. But if you're like a brewer and you're running you're boiling wort in massive brew kettles and then refrigerating it for 3 weeks as you let your product ferment, right? You're going to have a lot greater natural gas demand, energy demand, refrigerant demand, and those kind of those will manifest themselves in different priorities and different metrics that need to be managed. So I guess in short, there will be certainly some nuance for each company. At the same time, there is kind of a standard set or a common set of KPIs. The utilities that are consumed, scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, the water that's being used. Those are pretty common no matter what industry you're in.
All right, so we only have maybe 2 minutes left. My colleague Karina is going to put up my final slides, but while she's doing that, do you have any final thoughts? Anything else maybe you want the audience to know before we all peel off and finish up our day?
I'll just double down and say, get involved. Really be proactive, lead the conversations with your customers, lean on your partners. So, within GE Vernova, within our digital manufacturing business, we have strong relationships with our system integrators. Reach out to me, lean on us. We're happy to be, to support and be a partner to you. But I would just say, really be proactive, drive the conversation, and help, create those bridges for customers between their digital transformation journey and their sustainability journey.
Thank you. All right, Karina, you're on. Thank you very much. On behalf of CSIA, I would like to thank Ben for this informative discussion, and I would also like to thank GE Verona for sponsoring this event. And of course, thank you for attending. Be sure to bookmark the CSIA events calendar so you don't miss any upcoming events. And that's a wrap. Once again, thanks for joining us and have a great day.